Today, I'm going to talk about a topic that I have labeled Realigning the Human Collectives. And I'll start simply enough. I've said on other occasions, I believe that we humans are pack animals. We're not designed for solitary living, we're designed to live as part of a collective. In the beginning of time, probably we traveled in groups, hunting and gathering together. But for the longest time, we have surrounded ourselves with groups, and I think we function best and reach more of our potential if we have sufficient human connectedness and human support to make our lives more meaningful. Over the eons of time, we've gone from being clans to being extended families to being nuclear families. The groups we belong to have tended to shrink smaller and smaller, and now even the nuclear family is breaking down. But be that as it may, I think our essential nature is to be social, and we need to do that a lot. In addition to that beginning comment, let me start with a story. This is very fresh. I had an experience with a son yesterday and with the mother of the son today. These two people are Muslim immigrants from Iran a long time ago. The parents came here when I think they were young adults. They had recently been married in Iran, and it was the time that the Shah was being overturned and the government was in chaos. And they felt it would be the better path of discretion to emigrate to the United States and get out of the crazy turmoil and civil war that was going on in Iran. So they came here, and their son was born in the aftermath of that. He is now 23 years old. So a few years after they got here, they conceived him and he was born. The family structure has always been unusual. This was a marriage from rural Iran, and it was an arranged marriage. The father had been previously married, but his wife had died, and he was a widower, looking very much to marry another woman, perhaps a woman who was a little bit younger than his wife had been. And matchmakers had arranged this match, and they tied the knot. I believe that these two have always had uh, kindness towards each other. They haven't hated each other, and they've had respect for each other. But there's been a total absence of anything that I would call the ordinary warmth of being in a wonderful companionate relationship with another human being. They're more like respectful roommates that share a space together and engage in a variety of mutual tasks, including raising their child. Although it's been a very traditional family, and most of the responsibility for raising the child fell to the wife, and the father was in the export import business, and he was working 60 and 70 hours a week, and he continues to well into his 70s now. So he wasn't even home a great deal of time while this child was growing up. As you might imagine, the most powerful bond in the family is the bond between the mother and the son, with the father, the outsider who interacts with the other two on occasion. He has never been close to his son. He's never been close to his wife. They sleep in separate bedrooms. He would like he would like to be serviced sexually, and he's very clear about that, that as one of her responsibilities to the household, she is to allow him to be sexual with her when he feels like it. That's his payment for good behavior, for supporting the family, and for doing chores around the premises. And she's not, increasingly, she's gotten older, she's not willing to make that bargain with him. And it's gotten to the point where she does it once in a while if he's insistent, and she's gritting her teeth all the time while she's having sex with him. There's certainly no joy. She belongs to the Unitarian Church now. She has separated from her Muslim faith. And once in a while, she struggles with a daydream. There's one or two other middle-aged to beginning elderly parishioners at the Unitarian Church, liberal men, sweet men, and once in a while she even allows herself the possibility of a sexual daydream with one of them, but she's never done anything to act on any of that. Fast forward, we are in the present time. All the time she was raising the child, she was a hyper anxious mother. She imagined the many disasters. She was hypochondriacal. She over worried about any rashes he had or any coughs he might had. She was pouring a lot of anxiety into him that the world was dangerous and that there were a variety of disasters that could happen if he wasn't sufficiently vigilant. She read a lot of things as the internet came on. She is the enemy of cell phones. Cell phones emit radiation. The radiation will cause cancer. She was always trying to monitor how close he kept the phone. She would scold him that he should never run the phone in low battery mode because it sort of had to amp up its radio signal in order to connect because there was less wattage behind it. And somehow that was dangerous, and therefore she had rules for he should never have his cell phone in his pants pockets because the radiation was going to hurt his genitals, and on and on and on. This is only one of a variety of things I would hear over my years of interacting with this family. And I would see them occasionally, one, another, two of them, three of them, even when there was some crisis going on. I first came into the life of this family when the young man was in high school, and I stopped seeing him when he graduated from high school, and only this week did he come back again. Well, uh, there has been a lot of kindness and support and wisdom in this family too. So he has grown up in a reasonable fashion. I find him in some ways admirable. He finished college with good grades. Of all things, he discovered the wilderness when he was in high school. So, of all things, he majored in forestry management. And he has a job in Northern California in a small town. He works for a forestry company, and he loves the work he's doing. It feels very important to him. He's trying to reforest an overlogged section of Northern California and get forests to grow again. And he feels this is noble work, and he likes his work. He graduated with honors. He thinks maybe he's going to go back to graduate school at some point. He has separated from his family. He's living independently. He's not dependent on them economically. He earns enough money to provide himself a little old car and an apartment he pays rent on by himself. He likes cooking. He cooks very healthy meals for himself. And in many ways, he is separated from home at age 23 or 24. I'm not sure how many. And he's living what I would consider a reasonable and effective and developmentally appropriate life for a young man in his early to middle 20s. I have no worries about him particularly. What he wanted to come back and talk about again was he had had his first serious relationship with a young woman. He was having, I'll take that back. He was having his first serious relationship with a young woman. She was a classmate at college. She was 2 years behind him, and they saw each other almost every day while he was still in college. After he separated about a year ago, he moved away from San Luis Obispo, where he was going to school. He's up in Ukiah in Northern California now. So now they have a cross-state relationship with each other. They're connecting with each other through media periodically, and once in a while he goes down to visit her in San Luis Obispo. She comes up to visit him in Ukiah. And as is typical in young love or young exploration, whatever you want to call it, he's gradually seeing more and more traits of hers that he feels are oppressive and tedious. She's very childlike in some ways. She comes from a very turbulent family that was quite cruel to her. And she looks to him to be very supportive, devoted to her, and to be in some ways, because he's older than she is, the devoted parent she never had. And she's frequently filled with fears of one sort or another. And he's to drop everything he's doing at the moment and listen to her and comfort her and reassure her and take care of her emotionally. And the need seems to be excessive to him. And she doesn't act interested. If he has a problem, she's very dismissive. She listens to him for 2 seconds and she says, "Well, you'll take care of that. I believe in you." And she's not a good companion to him when he's troubled with something. And what he was talking to me about was he thinks he's getting ready to end the relationship with her, but he knows she's so attached to him, she's going to be devastated. It's really going to make her very miserable. She's going to fall apart. She's going to cry. She's going to pull at him. And he's a very decent and empathic person. He suffers thinking about the suffering she's going to have if he says he doesn't want to continue with her. And he came to me to get my counsel about would it be somehow okay if he separated from him. His plan was to tell him she's coming up to see him this weekend and to say goodbye to her at that point and to wish her well and send her on her way with his good wishes. And on the other hand, he thought maybe he just ought to continue seeing her for a while longer, take care of her for a while longer. And I think I said to him something like, she's going to get even more attached to you if you do that. And the pain of losing you will be even greater some months from now than it probably is now. And if you really believe that you've done a thorough assessment and you're convinced she's not the right person for you, it's okay. I believe that you may have to break hearts or have your heart broken 3 or 4 times, each time a learning experience before you really discover who a good partner for you might be and make some decision to keep somebody around on a more permanent basis. Young love tends to be inconstant, and people tend to be with others for a while and move on. That's not a sickness, that's not a defect. It's just what is, because there has to be a sampling and a trying on of things before final choices are made. So he left feeling much better. And since then, he has said goodbye to her up north and come home to nurse his own wounds. He's very guilt ridden right now, and he came home to be with his family again for this weekend. He got rid of her early, and so today his mother calls. I hadn't talked to her in a few years. She has family craziness going on in Iran. That's what I'm usually consulting with her about, what to say to her mother in Iran, what to say to her sister, and on and on. Today, she wanted to talk about her child. And she said she's impressed with her own child. I was pleased to hear that. And she thanked me for having taken care of him. Even though he's sad about the pain he's creating for the girl, he himself is feeling better. He's feeling liberated. He's feeling more cheerful and optimistic. He's now believes for sure that he did the right thing and that he will heal from this. And so she thanked me for helping him. And she said, there are just a few things about him that are still bothering me. I said, what's that? Well, he has an irritated eye and she worries about it. And he thinks the irritation is caused by the cell phone. Here we go with the demon cell phone again. And she wants to caution him he should never have the cell phone closer than arm's length from him. And maybe that's what's causing his eye trouble. That was thing number one. Thing number two, he wasn't eating properly. She had some counsel for him about some changes he needed to make in his diet. And I think, could I have a session for the two of them so she could explain these things to him, and I would help him to listen to her with kindness. And I thought for one moment, and I said, no, I'm not going to let you do that. I have no interest in participating in what you're saying. And she said, well, why not? I said, it is time for you to rest. He's out of the house. He's living his life. He's learning excellently from his own experiences. He doesn't need you to tell him what he needs to do anymore. He doesn't need you to write any part of the script of his life anymore. I trust him. If his eye continues to bother him enough, he has a healthcare plan that he's put himself on, and there are doctors in Ukiah. He will take himself to an eye doctor, and he will get coached by the eye doctor what to do with his eye. You don't need to make a diagnosis of him and tell him what to do with his eye. If he begins to feel frail or tired or something, he himself often talks about his diet. He will make adjustments in his diet. The world will teach him what he needs to do. So I am asking you to make a commitment to me. Never, never, never again give him any unsolicited advice. Now, he may ask you for your opinion. You are an important person to him. And if he's struggling with something, a health problem, an eye problem, whatever it is, and he wants to hear what you think about it, you can tell him anything you want because he's inviting you to counsel him. But if he hasn't issued an invitation, please keep your mouth closed. And if you're unhappy with having to be silent, tell your husband about your unhappiness. Tell any of your friends about your unhappiness. Call me and tell me about your unhappiness, but let him learn about the world on his own without your coaching. He's had enough now after this many years. You've done a fine job. He's a good human being. Please rest and find something else to be obsessed with. Why do I bring this up today? I bring this up today because the title of my remarks is Realigning Human Collectives. And I am now talking about a significant realignment that has to take place in a young person's life, and the realignment of the collective that's been called the family. I am trying to change the roles in the family with my interventions with the wife. I want her to stop and give up the parent role. He does not need parenting anymore. He needs her to move from a position of dominance and his being in a submissive position into a position of mutuality and co-equal status. They can become friends. If he gossips to her about something and wants her opinion, she can give it. She can talk to him about things that are troubling her now. They are on the same page. They are of the same stature. They are of the same maturity group. And I'd like her to live in that until she's very, very old. And he may have to take over and become her parent in some way if she starts to lose the capacity to live independently. Until then, they are to remain in a position of mutuality. I bring this up because this switch, the switch in the generational switch in the family as young people leave home is a critical element, and they're getting ready to be a married person rather than a single person. If they're still partly in a parental role with their own parents, they're in trouble, and it's hard for them to make a meaningful marriage. Now, this is only one example of a whole variety of things having to do with realigning relationships. In my last presentation, I rattled off a long list of items that have to be negotiated by the two people, things they have to agree upon. Who is going to do what? How is it going to happen? Who is going to be responsible for taking care of? And then a whole list of almost 30 things that the couple had to address. That work is very labor intensive. It starts with meeting somebody. It starts with educating oneself about who they are, how they function, what's important to them, what their values are, what their beliefs are, what their goals are. And then as the relationship starts being built, all these, who is going to do what? Who's going to be responsible for getting cars maintained? Who's going to tidy up? Who's going to cook? All these chores and errands and problems that have to be addressed have to be partialed out. The discovery of the other and the working out the terms of connection with the other, both of those are exceptionally labor intense. It's a good thing that there is limerence and romantic passion in many couples, because that's a driving force to drive them together to spend a lot of time with each other. And they need to spend a lot of time with each other. But the fact that they need to spend a lot of time with each other is going to create the problem I'm talking about today. Each one comes to the discovery and creation with the other, bearing a whole bunch of people to whom they're attached. They're bearing relationships with the members of their nuclear family. Sometimes in adolescence, they started building a chum network that became important to them. On into college, they let go of some of the chums and they accumulated some new chums so that they have a network of friends. They have colleagues that they spend time with and interact with frequently. So there can be as many as 10 to 30 people that are in the collective of one of the partners as the partner comes forward to interacting with the other potential partner. Each of those people have a stake in the relationship with the new member of the partnership. They're used to seeing them at certain intervals, they're used to talking to them at certain intervals, and they're used to participating in certain rituals with them at certain times and places. That now has to be changed. Everybody in the collective of each of these people has to face some being demoted. They, the new member of the new pair has to not be as available because time has to come from somewhere in order to do all the discovery work and all the creation work that's necessary to build the relationship. Other people who've been around for a while are not going to find the availability of the new partner member as great as it used to be. Now, there are a variety of reactions. Some people are really happy with what's going on. They see the discovery of a potential partner as a lovely thing in the life of their friend or their relative, and they're happy that this is happening, and they're glad to take a lesser position if something worthwhile is unfolding. There are others that are very possessive. They resent being demoted in that way. They'll even sulk. Some of the worst of them will even try to poison the new relationship so it fails. Then there are others who want to be experts. They want to coach and counsel the person who's building the new relationship, and they can't stop meddling with advice giving and carrying on. So it's typically parents of the one or the other of them that want to get into the meddling role. He's not treating you well enough, or he doesn't come from the right kind of background, or she seems stiff and standoffish. She's not nice enough to us. They have a whole list of criticisms and complaints, and they try and take over. I often am fascinated with watching wedding planning because this is often the forum in which all these rivalries, pettiness, and difficulties with the collective play out. The parents, one or another of them will come up with some of the money usually, and then they use the money as a right to dictate some part of the wedding. Well, no, we can't do it then. That's not the right venue. You may like it there, but I don't want to be caught dead inviting people to that place. You have to go to a different kind of place for this. We're not going to go outdoors. It has to be inside somewhere. Aunt Jenny is frail and she can't stand an outside wedding, and we have to have Aunt Jenny. So you're going to have to change your plans. You can't go to that meadow and have a wedding there. We're not going to pay for that. They try to use the money to control the outcome. And I often tell a couple who's getting married, if you lose a control of what the structure of your wedding is, that's a sign you're probably not ready to get married. You have to stay in charge, and you have to tame all the people who want to get into this and dictate what the wedding should consist of, how people should be dressed, who should be invited, if there's a meal, what should be served, what the venue should be, how long it should last, what music should be played. The meddling can be endless. And if you're going to tolerate any of it and give away any of it to the people who are not getting married, then you're not grown up enough to be married. I'm tough about that one. But the struggle over the wedding is a wonderful symbol for whether people are emotionally ready to be in charge of their own lives or not. Uh, all right, so that's one big thing that has to be put into place. Part of it is the demoting of the parental generation and making them much more like friends than they were parents, making sure their parental role has been much reduced or terminated, and realigning relationships with the other people, moving the potential partner up into second place in importance, and being able to say things like, "Oh, Jim and I have a chance to go out of town this weekend. I'm sorry you're wanting to be with us, but if Jim is free, that's my priority. I'm going to go out of town with Jim. You'll just have to wait for some other time. We can't be together with you then." So the partner has to rise up into second place just beyond the self in the hierarchy of what time is devoted to and who gets to dictate what the agenda of the work that's going to go on should be. Now, you have to scramble to give the others remaining behind enough of a something from you that they don't get weary and drop away, but some of them may. Some of them may leave you if you are coupling up and you're not devoting enough time and attention to them. They feel betrayed and abandoned and they will leave you. And they may leave you with a guilt trip on you for having done this to them. One of the things that's related to this that often comes up in discussions I have with young people who are building a relationship is what to do, if anything, with former love affair partners. Almost anybody who's coupling up has had some sexual experience with some people, some of whom have been quite important to them for lengthy periods of time. And I was never built this way, but I think I'm in the minority. A lot of the people I'm meeting who are planning on moving towards marriage want to keep some of those partners around. They want to have some continuing relationship with them. And often the partner to be is feeling threatened. What does this mean? Why does she want to keep seeing Jim? She and Jim had an affair for 2 years and then they separated. Jim went off with somebody else. Why is she even interested in him? Why does she keep texting him? Why is she keeping him around? I'm afraid he's going to put the moves on her again and she's going to betray me and paranoia starts. So I try and calm people and I'll talk about myself. I've had no need to keep anybody around who once was important and then I moved away from or they moved away from me. I was ready to be done and finished. And I never tried to suggest we'll become friends now, even if we're not going to be more significantly attached. And if that proposition was made to me, I told the person I was not interested. I wanted to move away. I wanted to heal and I wanted to make a fresh start. I wasn't interested in continuing to see them and to be reminded of what didn't work and what the disappointments were about that relationship. So that was never a problem for me, but it is a problem for others. And I try and counsel the person who's restless and is making demands of the potential partner. You have to get rid of everybody you knew before you met me. I told them that that was not only cruel, but probably unnecessary. And what I wanted them to do was I wanted them to meet these people. One of the things that should be put in place, there should be no separation. One member of the couple should not be off spending time with somebody else who used to be important, who is unwilling to meet or be a part of saying hello to and participating in the new relationship that was being created. That would be a litmus test. And if they needed to keep the partner to be totally to themselves and see them separately over and over again and have nothing to do with the new person struggling to become a partner, they were poisonous and they should not be kept around. That was consorting with the enemy. And I wouldn't blame the new partner who was threatened by this not to agree or be comfortable with that at all. If there's a true friend, if they had moved over into true friendship status, they would be happy that a new partner was coming forward who might be a good partner. They would be happy to be a threesome or come with a new partner themselves and be a foursome and socialize, recognizing the new partnership that was being created. As a matter of fact, some of those people might even be interesting to the new partner to be, and the new partner to be should meet them with an open mind and an open heart. could test them. Are they secretly trying to get my so and so back, or can they be a friend to me too? And they may have to see them several times before they make that evaluation. But be that as it may, it is possible that the new potential partner is bringing new potential friends among the people who used to be important to her or him. All right, that's that one. Part of the realignment of the human collective involves the following principle. Each of the two is embedded in certain rituals. I'll pick up a variety. Thanksgiving in one person's house has been held for the last 10 years in grandma's home. And the partner who's attached to that ritual goes to grandma's home every year. And probably so and so, the new partner can be invited to go to grandma's home too. That can be arranged. Unfortunately, the new partner has someplace the new partner has been going for Thanksgiving every year. So, what's to happen to that? Do they alternate years and go to one and then the other? Do they? But as I say to them, look, if you start a partnership and if you go through the ceremony of marriage, you are now at the head of a new family. In the beginning, the new family is composed of only two people, but more may be added. You may decide to have a child or children come into the family, and the family will grow. You may adopt somebody, and somebody will come in that way. You may form very close relationships with one or another other couples, and they will feel almost like your siblings, maybe even more than your true siblings feel to you. And maybe you'll start wanting to do things with them at ceremonial occasions, or they may drag you into some ceremonies that are going on in their life and suggest that you join them. Please be open and fluid. Do not keep honoring rituals that existed before the two of you came together. You have a blank slate. You can start creating the rituals that are meaningful to you and not keep living out rituals that were important to you before you met each other. I may start crying again. I had to live with this in my own life. Our older daughter got married when she was 26. She was now 29. My wife and I have been the Thanksgiving house for 50 years straight. We broke the string right after our 50th anniversary, and we went to somebody else's house for Thanksgiving for the first time. But for 50 years, we have had Thanksgiving, sometimes with as many as 32 people in residence, sometimes with as few as 6 or 7. But our kids, for the longest time, came as they got married with their spouses and as they had children with their children too. They would come to the family Thanksgiving that we would host. One year, thinking back when the oldest was 29, life had gotten complicated because one of the participants in our Thanksgiving was my senile mother in law, and she had died. And in the interim, her sister in law, another aunt of my wife's, had also become senile, and we had moved her to Southern California and had placed her in a skilled nursing facility. And I needed to fetch her and get her here. At that time, she was in Leisure World in Seal Beach, because that was the community she'd grown up in. And many years ago, and she was home and comfortable again in Long Beach. And so I had called my daughter. The oldest daughter was now living in Claremont, and she had quite a commute to come into the west side of Los Angeles to come for Thanksgiving. And I said, Amy, Mom and I need to tweak the start time for Thanksgiving a little. I think we'd like to actually have dinner at 3 o'clock in the afternoon instead of 4, because I have a real problem on my hands. You know, Aunt Edith has recently gone blind. She can't drive anymore at all. And I'm going to have to drive down to Seal Beach, fetch her, drive back to Santa Monica for Thanksgiving, then turn around after dinner, drive back to Seal Beach to take her back, and then finally come home to Santa Monica. And I'm going to be on the freeway for a long time. I'm just making a guess. If I made that commute to get her here at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the traffic, because it's right in the middle of the afternoon, and it isn't a midday Thanksgiving meal, and it's not an evening Thanksgiving meal. I think there'll be less traffic on the road if I do that. People will be watching football games, and I won't be in gridlock on the damn freeway. So could you come at 3 o'clock? And she didn't answer. It was silent. I said, did you hear me? She said, yes. And I said, well, can you come at 3 o'clock? And I heard her gulp, and she said, well, it's hard to tell you this, but we're not coming this year. I said, what? She said, no, we're not coming this year. I said, I'm sorry I have to disappoint you, but we're here in Claremont. It's quite a drive for us. And we put roots down here. We've been living here for 7 months. We met a bunch of nice other couples, and we have potluck dinners going all the time. And we decided we were going to have a potluck Thanksgiving. And Cliff and I are going to stay in the community here and just have Thanksgiving with our friends. We hope you'll understand. And if you're driving Aunt Edith home, maybe you'd stop through Claremont on your way home from Long Beach. Maybe you could have some pumpkin pie with us at the end of our Thanksgiving dinner, and we could at least say hello to you. And I said, no, I wanted to kill her. I wanted to cry. I wanted to kill her. How dare she do this to us? It hurt like hell. She was amputating herself from the family. Life was moving on. Everything was changing. Oh my God, this was only the beginning of abandonments and hurts I was going to have to go through, and the breaking of rituals. They would crumble one after another. And I was a wise psychologist. They would start growing their own rituals, and less would we have ours with the same cast of character. At some point, we'd be asked to join theirs instead of staying with our own. I didn't like that life was moving before I was ready for it to move. But I was as gracious a father as I could possibly be. I told her I appreciated how hard it was for her to disappoint me. I thanked her for her kindness. I told her I would tell mom, and I'm sure mom will be disappointed too. But both of us were very proud of her. That was a difficult thing. She was continuing on the path towards her own independent life. This was a perfectly wise and reasonable step for her to take. Yes, she was trying to get pregnant. I was sure she would be successful and a child would follow. And she needed to start creating rituals for her new family, one after another. And if it meant us no longer being the ritual household of her childhood and adolescence, that was a good thing. It was time for her to move on. I'm sorry if it was hard on me. I will try to make peace with the loss I'm feeling right now. She is a wonderful person, and I'm proud of her as a daughter. And I went and hung the phone up and started crying. But that's just one example of the kinds of transformations that have to come with the breaking up of rituals. I'm reminded of another one. I had a wonderful piece of my childhood. A lot of my childhood was miserable, but this was a delightful one. My father used to play golf, and some of my few nicest memories was, for some reason, when I was a little kid, he liked taking me on the golf course with him. There were no golf carts at that point. You walked. You carried the clubs and you walked, and he liked having my companionship. I would walk the 3.5 miles, keeping him company while he shot his lousy golf game. He was never a very good golfer, and he would curse a lot, but I liked being there with him and some of his men friends and the caddies on the golf course. That was a pleasant experience. So he had made many friends through his golf game, and they were in a variety of career paths. One was a dentist, one was owned a car dealership, and we would use these people for the various services they had. So they were both business colleagues somehow and personal friends. He had a poker game going in our basement every Tuesday night too, and they would come, one or another or more of them would come and play poker with us. And he wanted me by his side for the poker games too. So that was also lovely. The most wonderful thing was They created what they called the 10 Guys Association because there were 10 of them. So there were 10 guys, 10 married men with their own families. And they decided that they would acquire a piece of land out in the woods in Ligonier, Pennsylvania, which is a suburb of Pittsburgh. It's about 25 miles out of town, and it has a lovely river running through the woods in Ligonier. Art Palmer's golf course is there in Ligonier, Pennsylvania, too. That's what it's best known for. But they were going to find a parcel of land in the woods, and they were going to build a lodge. And sure enough, they did. They bought a piece of land alongside the stream, and they cleared it. They had people come in and take the trees down and the stumps down, and they bought the lumber. And every weekend, that was our weekend, we went there and we worked. I was pounding nails, I was doing things. I was I think 8 or 9. I was helping with the construction as best I could. This was a gathering of all the males who were doing construction work. One of them was a contractor, so he was coaching us on what needed to be done next. And god damn it, we built the 10 Guys Lodge. It had 6 bedrooms in it. There weren't enough for everybody to go at one time, but a sign up process was started as soon as the winter snows were gone. We never went there in the wintertime, and spring started coming. There was a lottery who would get to sign up first, and you could have the whole place. One family after another would get it for 3 or 4 days, or even for a week, and we would go there on vacations. And it was a wonderful place to be. God damn it, I like that. It was fun swimming in the river. It was fun just swinging on swings on the porch. It was fun walking in the woods. It was fun trying to fish. There were a few fish in the stream. That was heavenly for me. And that was a great thing that happened. So that was an example of building new collectives and new rituals. I love the ritual of having our time in 10 Guys Lodge. That was something I look forward to. And it didn't exist in the years before. It was created. So the best rituals for the new coupledom are ones that they're going to create for themselves, and sometimes will involve the participation of other people. Good. I have about 15 minutes left today. So I'm going to do something I wasn't sure I was going to do. I was going to talk about the particular challenges of creating step families, because everything I'm describing to all of you is terribly complicated if this is a step family that's potentially being created by the two people who are moving to form a partnership. If one or both of them have had previous marriages and they are bringing children to the interaction with each other. Could be only one of them, or it could be both of them bringing children. The more it's both of them and the more that there are multiple children, the more complicated becomes the task of working through settling who's going to be responsible for which of these things I talked about in the preceding section. And now there's an additional set of things. Who's going to transport the kids back and forth to school because they already exist? Who's going to arrange for visitation with the other family, the divorced families? Who's going to manage the relationship with the former spouses? There's an extra set of chores that are added, and an extra set of people somehow who have to be taken care of. You can't just negotiate anything you want with yourself and your proposed partner. This is going to affect the lives of children. So they have to somehow be involved in the planning and in the creation of whatever the new rituals are going to be. And it's enormously complicated and difficult and challenging. And often somebody in that mix is making trouble about something. It is never easy or gracious. It just doesn't flow. If you think it's bad enough to have jealous friends that don't like what you're doing, or a jealous parent, it is terrible if you have former spouses who are all upset with what you're doing as you attempt to build the step family. They want to scream at you that you're ruining the children, or they want to tell you that this is not right, or you're being immoral with what you're doing with your spouse. It gets really complicated. So I have some suggestions for those who are creating their partnership and are at the same time creating a step family in the process. Here are some principles of things you ought to know about and be sensitive to. First of all, your guilt is going to make trouble for you. Anybody, unless you're a sociopath, anybody who's in the midst of family breakup, either A, is terribly embittered and wants to blame the spouse for everything that's happened and is wallowing in a kind of terrible victimhood that they are the victims of just heinous and terrible behavior on the part of the spouse who left, and they're interacting with their children, poisoning their children about how terrible the spouse has been, and that's an awful thing to do to the kids. Or more likely, they may be doing some of that to calm their own tortured conscience, but they're feeling very guilty that they're breaking up a family and putting their children through some stress of having to go through the realignment. And there are two good ways to try and soothe their own guilt. Way one, I've already talked about, demonize the other person and make it inevitable that they had to leave. They had no choice. Everybody would have died if they hadn't left. It was so poisonous in the household. That's a good one. The other one is to become really obsequious toward the children. Put the children in charge and indulge whatever wishes they have for whatever should go on, because maybe you can soothe them by just letting them have all their wishes come true about anything. Be at their disposal. Make every day a trip to Disneyland and every other day a Christmas that you're holding for them so that they can have a radiantly happy life and not get hurt and upset by the fact that a divorce is going on. This mistake is more common than the first mistake, but both of them exist in a plenitude. And some of them, there are those of us, I was one of them, who has both of those things. So I will tell a true story about my own life. This was in the first year, I think, of living with my present wife. We were maybe just married, or we were just about to get married. We started living together before we were actually married. And my children were over visiting that weekend. So we had 4 kids in residence. And by and large, they liked each other. That was not a problem, mixing them up. They seemed to be able to interact with each other without a lot of venom or resentment or animosity. They were off in another part of the house, playing in various combinations. And then the littlest of them, my daughter Naomi, who was somewhere between 3 and 4 at that time, came into the living room where I was talking to Hermine. And she said, "Daddy, my toy is broken. I can't get it to work. Come fix my toy." And I said, "Okay." And I turned to Hermine and said, "I'll be back as soon as I can." And I picked myself up and left. And I went and I did get the toy fixed. And it was a toy with a battery in it. The battery had run out. So I replaced the battery and it started working okay again. And I came back. And my wife said to me, "You shouldn't have done that." I said, "What? You shouldn't have just gotten up and walked to fix Naomi's toy." I said, "What?" She said, I think you heard me. I wish you hadn't done that." I said, "What are you doing? Are you dictating to me how I should raise my children? What is this? I don't like this. This hurts. I'll raise my children however I please. You're not an expert on how to raise my children." And I was really unkind to her. I was saying really cruel things. "What makes you think you're an expert on raising my child?" I forgot all the insults I laid on her. She just listened quietly. And again, like she had another significant moment I've talked about previously, I could see that she was starting to cry. And she said, "You don't understand. She's now a toddler. This is a learning time for her. She's not just a blob. We need to start setting standards for her in a kind fashion and teaching her what the rules are of many things in the world. We've already started to teach her how to use a knife and fork and how to put a napkin in her lap and how to sit on a chair with a booster on it rather than a high chair. I thought this is a time that she starts knowing about taking turns. And you were engaged in a conversation with me. Here's what I wish you had said. I wish you had said, 'I'm almost done talking to Hermine. I'll be with you in 3 or 4 minutes and I'll go and fix your toy. But you can wait now. It's not your turn. It's Hermine's turn. I'm talking to her.' I wish you had started that teaching because we're going to have to start that teaching around something else. And there was an opportunity to start it now." And she said, I also want to say something even more important to you than what I think, and I've studied child development as my major in college. What I think is important in a way way beyond principles of child development and what should be taught at what ages. She said, Naomi is here temporarily. She's only with us part time to begin with, and she is passing through your life. She will be with you for a while. She will emancipate herself and she will go out into the world. We will, if we're fortunate and have a nice relationship with her, we will see her occasionally. But for the longest time, she will be very busy building her life, spending time with friends, and not interacting with us very much at all. It's not going to be like it is now, even though it's only halftime now. It's going to be even less, much less. I want to tell you that I will be here every day of the rest of your life, as long as I have breath and the ability to do that. I'm never leaving you. I will be here since you're older than I am, probably when you die, and I will take very good care of her. You're putting your priorities in the wrong place. If it's a challenge between having a conversation with me and asking Naomi to wait, please choose me and not Naomi. I think it's very good for her to know what the hierarchy really is. And I would like to be in second place. I would not like you out of guilt to keep giving Naomi what you think she wants because you think that's going to buffer her from the hurt and woundedness that's inflicted on people who have to live through a divorce. But it's not going to work. It's only going to spoil her and give her a crazy sense of entitlement that she can exploit you with anytime she wants to. So I pass my wife's wisdom on to whoever is paying attention to this. Oh, the second thing about creating a step family, other than getting the hierarchy right, the second thing is the step parent has to be empowered. What I mean by that is my mother, I'll draw my own experience. My mother made this terrible mistake. My father died when I was 12. She grieved for 2 years and I turned psychologist. I started to tell her to get out of the house, get active. It was fine if she had some dates. She ought to do something social. It wasn't doing anybody any good for her to stay in her bedroom crying in her widowhood. And she listened to me. And by the time I was 15, 1 year later, she came home with a stepfather. And I hated him. I didn't like who she brought home. I thought he was a crude man. I hated, this is another point I'm going to talk about. I hated imagining that she was being sexual with him in the next bedroom and sleeping with him in the bed my father had slept in, and maybe she was fucking him. That was disgusting to me, the very idea of my mother fucking another man. And so I wouldn't give him the time of day. Dinner would be served. I'd come and sit down at the dinner table. He would try and talk to me about something, and I would turn and start a conversation with my mother and tune him out. I tried to interact with him the least I could. And my mother came to the conclusion the best way to handle this was to keep the two of us apart as much as possible. And that was a mistake. The step parent has to become another person, another adult who's participating in the raising of the child, not some boarder who the real parent interacts with occasionally. Now, fortunately enough, developmentally, if the children are still in elementary school, they often don't make much of it if there's a new adult coming into the house and spending time with their mother. They expect that, or father, they expect the adult of the house will have other adult friends. They don't mind if they go out to dinner with some other adult. They don't even mind if they go to bed with them and they get up in the morning and somebody's coming out of the bedroom who's not their parent. They expect somebody to be in bed with mom because or dad. That's how it's always been. And now they're almost content that mom and dad has somebody to be in bed with again. It's only the problem I had later on when the kid is becoming sexual himself or herself that they get grossed out by the idea. They have to confront the fact that the parent or home is really a sexual being and is probably screwing in the bedroom next door with this new person who's showing up. That makes it harder for them to adapt. But feel free to start dating if you have a little one at home. They're not going to get upset by you doing that. They're not going to feel betrayed or that you're not taking proper care of them. That only happens later. What needs to be done is a variation of what my wise wife did instead. My kids weren't over at this time. Well, that wasn't necessary. This had to do with teaching her children what my role in the house was going to be. I was not just somebody visiting or a roomer in the house. That night at dinner, she announced that she would like to have a family talk after dinner. And I thought, oh, what a nice tradition. If I come into a house where everybody has a family talk after dinner on Tuesday evenings, no, this was a special thing she thought she wanted to do for this night. Maybe there would be regular ones if this was a good thing and it turned out to be a nice sort of new ritual to start. But she had something that was very heavily weighting on her and wanted to discuss it with the three of us, her two little girls and me, after dinner. So we sat down after dinner and she said, girls, I want to apologize to you. It's getting better now, but I was not a good mother to you for the last 2 years. I was very depressed because things were really very painful between your father and me. We were having very bad arguments. I was frightened that the family was going to come apart, which it did finally. I didn't know if we could fix it. We tried hard, but we weren't able to fix it. And I sometimes just couldn't stand my pain anymore. I was crying quietly apart from you because I felt like I was in something miserable and there was no way out that wasn't terrible. So I think I neglected you. I wasn't emotionally available to you. I don't think I comforted you enough during this period of time. And so I apologize. I'm feeling much better now. And now it's not just me. Arthur's here too. You've met Arthur. You've been to places with him before he moved in. We've been out to dinner for meals occasionally. We've been to the beach together. We've even taken some trips together. We seem to have a nice time together. And I think you'll see he's a kind man. He's decent with you. He's thoughtful with you. He likes interacting with you. So I think I need to give you a healing experience. I'm going to rest. I need to finish healing from what I lived through. I'm still very drained and not very present some of the time. And I will rest a lot. I'll take naps frequently. I'm going to heal myself so I can come back fully. In the meantime, Arthur is in charge of you. He's not your parent, but he is the adult in the house. If you have anything that's bothering you, please don't talk to me about it. Talk to Arthur about it. If you want permission to go up the street to Billy's house, I know she talked to the older one. You like going there after school sometimes. To ask Arthur if it's okay if you go. If he's not here, call the office and leave a message for him on the answering machine, and he'll call you back and discuss going to Billy's with you. I'm already giving you a small allowance. If you think your allowance is not enough and want to change it, please ask Arthur. He's in charge of your bedtime hours. If you don't think the bedtime is good, work that out with him. He is going to make those decisions. I'm not withdrawing totally. If he has a decision to make, he'll talk to me about it and I'll give him my opinion. But in the end, he gets to decide. It will be his decision. So what the hell? I've never been through anything like that in my life. I wasn't prepared for it. I almost started crying on that occasion. I couldn't think of a more wonderful gift she was giving me. She was actually turning her children over to me to raise. She was trusting me that I would be good and decent to them, and I would be thoughtful and nourishing for them. What greater gift of confidence she could give to somebody than taking a chance on me and giving her most precious belongings to me. And I will stop on that note. I'm not quite done, and I will pick up there next time, but I have to leave now. I'll give you 2 minutes to make comments about anything.
This may be something that we can talk about in the future, Arthur, but in some ways when you have, two sets of children two sets of stepchildren in terms
Uh-huh.
of how to combine them, or the relationships that would or could develop between them.
Yes, that's fine. Keep it in mind and prompt me about that next week.
Okay.
Anything else?
Um, just that observation that it keeps showing that being flexible, being as flexible as possible in roles and families and stuff is kind of a never-ending task.
Absolutely. Thank you for that one because I want to throw away all the rules of every culture about
Yeah.
what we should be doing. We should stop shooting on ourselves and we should invent
Mm-hmm.
solutions. We should invent solutions to problems that are idiosyncratically attuned to the individuals involved.
Yeah.
There are no rules anymore. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.